Jimmy Kimmel returns, Trump babbles at the UN, and Tylenol causes autism. We'll discuss all that today and more on the conversation with Harold Dave. There's Harold, there's Dave, and I'm Keone.
It's the conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to give my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. How you doing, Harold? How you doing, Dave?
All good.
Another day in paradise.
Another day in paradise. I had a headache today, but trust me, when I saw that Tylenol bottle on my sink, I just threw it the hell away. I just threw it away.
I can't.
Are you pregnant and worried about your child having autism?
No, I wasn't, but since I only watched a portion of the speech and I did not do any research and I just listened to what people tell me, I got rid of it in a panic.
The reason women take Tylenol when they're pregnant is it is the safest pain reliever. It's about the only one that they can safely take. And now you're, shitting on that. But I don't want to get ahead of the game.
Like we always say, when you can't take the other medicines that are stronger, they give you ibuprofen and Tylenol for a reason.
I was gonna say ibuprofen is your other option. So
Is this
it is what
Kennedy? Is this coming from Kennedy?
I think we're being pumped. I think is
Absolutely.
Ashton Kutcher somewhere around here? Where is he?
Go ahead, Dave.
Ashton?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, no, absolutely. Yeah, Kennedy is big on this, and so they have found a few. There are studies that show correlations in cohorts in groups of people, correlations between taking Tylenol when you're pregnant and your child having autism. However, they always said, look, correlation is not causality. And, so there was a study that, was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And if you Google Tylenol and autism taking Tylenol and autism in pregnancy, it is the first goddamn thing that comes up. It is available free. They made it available free, and it goes through the evidence to that where they test whether or not it actually was the case. And not to get too deep into the weeds, but the thing is that this is what's called a spurious relationship, that the things that make you need to take Tylenol are probably what is associated with autism. So the women who are going to have children who have autism are more likely to have conditions in their pregnancy that require them to take Tylenol. Right? That's the alternate explanation there, why correlation does not equal causation. And what they did in this study, they had this huge study with millions of people from Sweden, and a big health study. What they did is they looked at the siblings of the autism, right? So all the kids with autism, they looked at their siblings, because these are all the kids that have autism. So the same parent, right? They looked at what happened with the siblings and said, was there a difference in how the use was? And it's a little more complicated than that, but they went and looked at it and they said, no, there is no evidence. The mothers took Tylenol with the other kids and they had the same, they didn't have, it wasn't associated with these guys getting it. So, and I'm oversimplifying how they did the sibling study, but they, smart people looked at this and they came up with the answer. And that's why, you look past these other reports and, this is why scientists need to review this stuff. But if you do your own, my thing is do your own research. Google it. It's the first goddamn hit that comes up is the explanation. So these guys are just dumb. I mean, this as a social scientist, this is dumb as dog shit, right? What they've done. That's
Oh, you're just spewing your leftist mumbo jumbo. I knew a guy who ate bananas and got cancer. So
how is the
bananas
check
are a cause for
corporate
cancer.
pharma
I
left
thought it was
wing.
the color yellow. I'm
I thought
sorry.
Republicans' mission were not to piss off billionaires. Harold, what is the upside? What? Why? What is the like? This is the problem that I always get. Why is this just coming out of the blue now, and for what? Is this a
Well,
distraction? What is this?
you want me to think like a 2 year old. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Because I only a 2 year old will say because, just because, or something to that nature. But the bottom line is initially, and I remember years ago, they were saying it was vaccines that was causing autism. Now they've gone to Tylenol. So it's almost like we're going to keep moving the goalposts until we try to figure it out rather than just do the research, do the genetic analysis, if there is something. Now, we do know that there are genetic anomalies that come up every now and then that may contribute to or cause certain types of birth. And I don't know if we want to call autism a birth defect, but certain impacts on the development of a child, whether it's early onset or later on. But I think, they're reaching or grasping for straws, which don't exist and they can't find anything to substantiate it. But not only that, you're also firing the people that have done the research over the years that have led to us having a healthier nation. And they're even ignoring the fact, even with vaccines, and going back to that conversation I know we had a few weeks ago, but going back to that, you're ignoring the fact, even in Florida, that you could have a rise in all of these different ailments that plagued us for decades, and they not even, I guess, assume any responsibility for it. And that's where my issue is. Who's going to be held accountable when we turn this thing around? And
Uh, no one, but I'm gonna fix a problem because I don't like Dave being so much taller than you. So hold on, let me fix. There we go. Let me fix that. Yeah, you're looking a little short over there. I adjusted it. We're good. Dave, I always want to say retort on here, but you guys don't disagree too often. But just your response on this topic because first of all, people on Facebook get mad when I call Trump an idiot. Yeah, you know what? I probably shouldn't name call, but God dang it. Can you be smarter than me? Like,
at least,
did you not pre-read what you were going to say? Did you not know how to say certain words? Like, just say
acetaminophen.
Tylenol, dude.
No. Say
Uh,
acetaminophen like every other fucking person in the world.
we thought Bush
It's
was
not that
going to be the
goddamn hard.
we thought
Okay.
Bush was going to be the president that messed up words. Bush is a Rhodes Scholar of pronunciation compared
yes,
Yeah,
to
Bush
Tyler.
laughs at himself. I mean,
Yeah.
I did not like W, but
Uh-huh.
by God, that man laughs at himself and has a good time. And it's hard to stay mad at him.
Well, that's the one thing they said when they were surprised at Obama and Bush's relationship. And someone said, these two people, if you don't like these two people for whatever reason, when you meet them, it totally changes your mind. When they started meeting each other, they were like, they looked at each other with the same reason, like, how could you be mad at this guy? You talk to him for 10 minutes and you just like him as people, no matter, separate the politics, you like them um, as people. But I just, Dave, I can't wrap my head around why is this a thing at this particular moment?
It is so, well, it's Kennedy, right?
Mhm.
Kennedy had his Maha, Make America Healthy Again. And at a certain level, he was helpful because it was more of a bipartisan. There's people on the left, the crunchy folk, who also are worried about dyes, and so the appeal of this, and like I said, when I was joking about being anti-corporate pharma, no, I mean that's right. The concerns with what's in the food, and a lot of the things that Kennedy brings to the table are shared by people on the left, right? And so he had a broadening appeal. It makes us, unlike so many of the things out there, it makes a certain sense having Kennedy in there if you're trying to reach out and broaden your appeal in the campaign. Um, However, just the nonsense, and just when it comes to autism, and not, I don't want to get into a Dunning Kruger mode right here of it, but a lot of the discussion of uh, the idea that there's this explosion of autism, so there has to be a cause. There's an explosion of autism diagnoses, and when you realize that the data it's not like deaths from COVID, right? Where you had a you might have some who did what did they, but it was very clear, like this is a thing that just happened, right? Um, Diagnoses of autism are are depend on you being diagnosed, and there a lot of the understanding of why there's been an explosion has been nothing to do with people actually having more autism, but that there being value in being diagnosed with autism because of the way our social services, our medical system works. If your child is diagnosed with autism, that gets in to see doctors. It gets in school systems. It gets stuff there. So there's a incentive to diagnose that, and in general, as a society gets more scientifically advanced, we get more sick people, right? Because we find
Well,
things wrong with
that's
people.
one thing people don't
Um,
understand. Well, that's also, like you said, the willingness to go and either get treatment or go to a doctor and get a diagnosis. Why is mental health diagnosis has gone up? Is it because everyone has a mental health problem? Not everyone's always had a mental health problem. I always give the analogy, like I had an argument with someone who was 66 years old, and he said, well, everybody's got mental health, all these men have mental health problems these days. Men, we didn't used to have that. I said, no, it's because I go to the doctor and talk to a therapist now instead of stopping at the bar on the way home from work, drinking myself into a stupor, and then going home and smacking my wife because she made casserole again. I'm not saying everybody who drinks a lot does that, but my point is,
and you'd
we
have a
ha-
life,
yeah, we
you know,
seeking
beard.
medical treatment, people who seek medical treatment more, you're going to come up with more diagnoses of anxiety, depression, all those things. Yes, men have been depressed before. They just stuffed it down and handled it
Yeah.
poorly. Um,
Well, we're
so
here
yeah.
in I'm here in Maine, and
Mhm.
in Hollowell, we went on the
Geez, he
haunted
plugs Maine
history.
a lot, doesn't he, Harold? He doesn't miss a chance to plug Maine.
Well, one of the things though in going on these ghost tours, which I don't
Uh,
believe, but there's a lot of history involved in it, and they
Doing
talk
it right
about the old houses that had disappointment rooms.
mhm,
And a disappointment room was the thing that it was a name, it was a thing. It was where you put your kid who was not fit to be seen in public.
mhm,
And so there are a lot of bad stories, but back in the day, you hid
yeah.
mental illness, you hid
Mhm,
neurodivergence.
mhm,
It was something to be ashamed of.
mhm,
So, you wouldn't diagnose somebody in that condition because the family would be ashamed. They would be ruined. Their children couldn't marry other people because there was this history in their family.
mhm.
Whereas, we have the exact opposite situation where there are actually, if anything, incentives to get your child diagnosed as having autism. And we've removed stigmas. There's still stigmas there, but just when you want to understand, yeah, back then they had these kids and they hid them in rooms and did horrible things to them. And so,
Well, three things. One, I would have loved when you said I don't believe in ghosts. A face would have appeared in that window behind you because I've actually seen a ghost, so that's crazy. Two, you're getting off soft. The disappointment room is one thing. How about back in the day, instead of putting your child in a disappointment room if they had autism or any type of slight illness, you just send them to an asylum.
yeah,
You just
yeah,
send them to an asylum, and
they
we
did
all,
that too.
we just send them there. Harold.
I was going to say, but there's a great difference between someone who may be had a learning disability, because
Hmm.
we moved from LD to a whole lot of other labels now in
Hmm.
today's age. Which, again, from a capitalistic standpoint, it pays well. It pays well to label. But when we look at autism, we would normally describe that person as being different or being slow, not realizing that they may have been brilliant, as we found out with what Einstein, who was labeled, and then turns out being the one who, really beat us all, hands down. But I think what we also fail to realize is, and I do recall someone saying a while back that if we stopped testing, we probably wouldn't have as many cases of something. So I think that might be the problem as to why we got all these cases. No, but seriously, you know, the challenge that we have is when we look at, in the US, I think it's about 3% of the population, between 3 and 4% of the population are deemed as having autism. You know, it's a higher rate for boys than it is for girls. So, the question is, what do we do? We don't know what the cause is, because there's not been a great enough emphasis on what the cause of um, this challenge or this disability might be. But moving forward, we'll never get to how we should treat it or how we should handle it. But I will say this, as a classroom teacher who work with students with disabilities, my smartest kids in the school, the students that I worked with, you know, they had challenges with, you disrupting their routine. But if they're in their routine, they can cognitively process things that'll blow your mind. For example, one kindergarten student, and I don't know if I shared this before, in going through the test to see if he knew his letters and sounds. Well, he made me, literally the teacher, he made me allow him not just to give me a letter, a sound, but a musical instrument for each letter of the alphabet, which I didn't even know existed, but he showed me. He taught me that day. And so we look at the brilliance of these particular individuals, but I think we're also casting a negative light on them. I don't know if it's intentional or unintentional, but we need to be careful as to how we even talk of this particular population, because there are some brilliant minds that exist within those individuals.
I was a kid and I didn't even know what autism was, and then I saw the movie Rain Man, and that was my window because I thought someone was autistic when I was younger. That meant something was wrong with them,
Mhm.
and so this is why another reason why I love movies. You know, people make fun of movies. Just read a book. Well, books ain't for everybody, but
And
watching
they don't
that
tell the whole
movie
story.
made me
Well,
get an appreciation for that and understand.
if you speaking of movies, I can't help but think of the movie about Temple Grandin, who uh, in the movie it is portrayed in the movie, but I've read no, this actually happened. She went with her mother to a conference on autism, and at that point, the kids that were diagnosed that way were just extreme cases, and she's there and she starts talking about autism, and they ask her, she's a young woman, they ask her, do you have a child with autism? And she looks at him and goes, no, I'm autistic. And the doctors and the experts in the room, because I read the first person account of one of the guys, he was just like, say what? And for him as a doctor, this idea that he could talk to someone who had autism was strange because it was opaque. They couldn't read. And the thing was that the
Jesus.
recognition that there were people on the border, and that and of course what we did is we moved and diagnosed lesser and lesser extreme cases. But the point is that when Temple Grandin is there in that room, at that point, the experts don't even think that they can talk to people with autism. So the boundary of what is and isn't autism greatly expands. And,
Mhm.
you know, without it, you know, and
Well,
like you
before the
say,
spectrum, you were either autistic or not. Before the spectrum, you were
right.
autistic or not.
And now we just call it autism to kind of take the sting out of it, you know. And I see that in social media a lot more, where people are
Mhm.
going to say I'm on the spectrum, and they're free to admit it. And of course they're functional people, like, you know,
Of
because we're
course. I
all a little
mean,
whack. I mean, you
right.
know, Jesus.
Um, Transitioning. Speaking of whack, that's a good segue. We're gonna watch a clip from my one of my favorite people to listen to talk to, James O'Brien. And so Trump talked at the UN, and I think every country just loves when. Well, here's the thing. I put this on Facebook earlier. When he first addressed the UN, leaders were laughing, which is never a good sign. And I don't think that's. It's never a good sign. Now there was not any laughter. If you just watch the scanning of the room, not in this clip, but if you go back and watch on YouTube and watch the UN presentation with, you just look at these world leaders, and if you just look at their face, a lot of them are like, how is this guy running a country? Do we need to put him in an asylum right now? Because he just babbled and babbled and babbled. And one of the things is he constantly attacks the mayor of London, which has been the most successful mayor of London in history of London, which is crazy. And it's just, well, let's let James break it down. Oh, watch this.
Here is the mayor, here is the president of the United States of America telling lies about the most successful, the most electorally successful city mayor in the history of this country.
I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that.
That's a lie that was doing the rounds on social media 10 years ago. In fact, the original clip or the original quote described it as Shakira law. And we used to laugh about that. And we're not laughing now. Because when the most powerful man in the world tells lies like that, it matters.
It matters. But people go, well, why don't we listen to it? It matters. So what's not funny and not funny about that is 10 years ago, I actually saw an episode of James O'Brien when his own citizens were saying that the mayor is going to bring up Sharia law. And it's like, you guys, if you, like you just said, Google, if you look at your research, it wasn't a real post and everyone ran with it. And it said Shakira law, which made it funny. And then we have our president 10 years later saying it at the UN, just babbling about it for what reason? What does that have to do with the United States?
It has to do with, his mental decline, that, he is reaching back to 10-year-old memes. This is something that was part of the Tea Party conspiracy theories, that Sharia law was being introduced into the US, and there were all sorts, this predates, but it's kind of like critical race theory, and whatever the scary idea du jour is, and it never happened. No one was ever going to bring in Sharia law anywhere in the United States. It couldn't happen because we have laws, right? We have a legal system. But it was very, people took it very serious. And the thing is, though, kind of like him talking about the Unabomber, his uncle at MIT teaching the Unabomber, who never went to MIT, who had not been identified as the Unabomber before his uncle, Trump's uncle, died. There's simply no way this could be something that Trump is actually recalling. Yet he puts this together, and I've seen psychologists talk about it and say, look, this is what people with dementia do. They put together things from their past, and they construct a memory, and they believe it. And so Trump is reaching back to something from 10 years ago, because at this point he's not recalling, he's rambling, and put it in the context of him talking about, sure, he talked about the escalator mishap and his teleprompter not working, but he goes into a tirade about the UN not letting him remodel the place.
Oh, yes, that part about
it,
they could have had marble, but you got plastic.
And yeah, and this is like, when was that? Right? That's before,
Okay.
like, a lot of the people.
One thing I hate is I 100% hope he doesn't have dementia, because I don't want this to be blamed on dementia, what I've been watching him do for the past 14 years or so. He's been,
got it.
but he's been, yeah, but dementia is going to be the scapegoat if he does, because like I always tell people, my problem with Trump doesn't start when he ran for president. It's been way back in the freaking 80s. You know, he still talked like this back then when he used to own a team in the USFL. He talked like this. There's an interview I saw of him, I think like 30 years ago or 20 years ago, where he talked about how thin skinned he was, you know. So this is not all new stuff, but I think the dementia, if he does have dementia, makes it worse. But I just don't hope if he does have dementia, then everyone on his
I
side
mean,
doesn't start using this as a excuse to why he's been like he's been. Harold, do you know why he's saying London has changed so much? Do you know why?
You want me to try to understand the mind
Because
of a 2-year-old,
London is like the
but I
US.
know that.
London has become so diverse because many countries are learning. Why one of the reasons why this is the most powerful country in the world is because of the diversity. The more a country is diverse, the better in terms of progressing and all those things. So the citizens of London sound like a lot of the MAGA people you hear when they talk about how they're and this isn't the first time. Dave, remember after we had the civil rights movement, even before civil rights, when brown skinned people moved in other places, the neighborhood has changed.
Hmm.
It's the neighborhood has changed rhetoric that we've heard time and time and again. I don't recognize my neighborhood anymore. Harold?
well,
Great. Okay. This is not, so to me, it's nothing new. I mean, he spoke this way during his first term. He's speaking the same way now. I mean, the only thing is he was much more, I think, focused back then than he is now because his mind, he is, based on the conditions that he has, he is starting to lose brain processing power at a more accelerated rate than what it was prior to. This is just my theory and what I kind of observed. And, his positions have always been the same. Everybody's wrong, and he's the only one on the planet that's correct. And so, with him having that position and that belief, what can one say? We'll never understand it because we don't know where. You know, you just had a memorial service where they talked. He rambled on about some other stuff that was totally unrelated to what that particular event was supposed to be about. So, he's always going to go off script. And for someone that accused Biden of using teleprompters, why complain about your teleprompter going out? If that's the case. But we know also reading is so fundamental, and it's also something he's challenged with as well. So I'm gonna land my plane there and wait on Dave.
I just, I'm trying to well, he is always the biggest expert on everything, right? I mean, and by his own
Uh,
words,
The
right?
best.
We understand. He recently in that press briefing about the Tylenol was talking about how they understand things better. They understand healthcare. They understand vaccines. They understand better than all these other people. He said that, right? He they have said like JD Vance. A lot of people when talking about trade, they know better than all the economists. And my question, the problem with Trump is he never has a basis for doing it. What is his basis for knowing a damn thing about anything at this point? Does he attend it? Normally presidents get briefings and they
Hmm.
are brought up to speed on a vast array of details by a legion of analysts and intel people. Trump doesn't do that.
well,
They
no,
have
because in the first term he didn't listen to the briefings. They said
I
he
don't
would
think they
doodle or
do that,
fall
or
asleep.
yeah, and they bring him comic book level stuff, and because they
Audio
cannot
books.
tell him anything, right? They've tried to figure out. I know that Tulsi Gabbard, somebody was trying to come up with a way of presenting information to him in a rapid fire way that if it wasn't comic was saying. But this is the thing: is there is no reason to think he has a factual basis for anything. He doesn't lived in London. Has he seen Baltimore? Does he get briefed on the crime stats of Baltimore? Right? He probably hears an anecdote here or there, right? But you know, so anything he does, he has very little factual basis, except when he meets with people, right? And when he meets with people, they might make an impression on him. And it is not necessarily about the facts, it's about the impression. And, so we see that Putin or Zelensky can get in there. Starmer can get up with him and talk to him. There are people Europeans are increasingly very good Trump whisperers, right? And so he comes away with an impression. And this is no way to run a railroad, folks, but it's what we got and what's going on right now.
I sometimes when you guys are talking and I want to say something, I'm like, well, never mind. They've said it all. I don't need to add to that, especially when Harold lands the plane. It's a long time. Apparently, he's never been to an airport. It takes a long time to get back on the plane and get off the ground.
That phrase lives in my head rent free. And I love it.
Yes.
Before we get into Kimmel, just a couple comments and posts that we've seen. Arkansas farmers. Trump told you he was going to deport your workers. Trump told you he was implementing tariffs. Trump told you he was cutting the $3 billion Farmers Project Budget Act, which accounted for $19.5 billion that would be enhanced in the Farmers Project. But 77% of you still voted for him, and now you're complaining that you don't have workers, you don't have money, and crop season's going to be bad.
Now, in fairness to these folks.
Okay. I want to take the fairness, and then Harold, you fire off after that. I don't know where Dave's going, but let's see.
But in fairness to these folks, there's a guy, I've mentioned him before, Will Westmoreland, who does agricultural things, and he talks to these issues a lot. And he is able to talk to the farmers who have lost things. And he rejects the FAFO Schadenfreude, right? That a lot of people on the left just are like, F you farmers, you voted for him, you deserve what's coming. And Will Westmoreland says, no, this is not right, because his famous line is when he talks to people that voted for Trump, he says, look, I don't want you to admit you're wrong. I want you to admit you were lied to. And another commentator was talking, Beth Cox Richardson, and she's a political scientist and does these things. And she was making the point that, Trump promised everything to everyone. And so we can point to where Trump said all the things that you just laid out. However, he also told them we're going to deport the worst of the worst. Now he's not doing that, right? But he told them that. Project 2025, right? We can point to a lot of Project 20, and he's just doing this. Farmers, I've seen actual farmers who are confronted with this go, oh, well, but he said Project 2025 was fake news, right? And they believed him. They were lied to. And so, Cox Richardson was saying, I think I hope I get her name right. She was saying, look, he made all these promises to people, and yes, they were contradictory, but you could pick and choose what you heard. And so right now she says this is a problem because, like the Arkansas farmers, now reality, you can't eat your cake and have it too. And so Trump is deporting everyone, not just. And so now the reality is setting in. But in fairness, these people, they were told a lot of things were put out. And Trump, just one little example. Trump went on that podcast, and this isn't farmers, but he went on the podcast with the venture capitalists, and they said, and it was very friendly. He was trying to be nice with these guys. He said, when are you going to let us recruit the best, best workers? And Trump, I'm going to open that up. I'm going to do more than anyone. I'm going to, green cards for everyone who has a degree in the U.S., right? Remember when he did that? He on this podcast gives them all this. And the thing is, now he wants $100,000 fees for an H-1B visa, which is the exact opposite. Now, if you want to recruit someone, not only do you got to get the visa, you got to pay $100,000 to hire that person. That is the opposite. And so my point is that in the instance, he told people what they wanted to hear,
Oh,
and now he's going
that's
back on it.
if you only listen
But
to the president speak when he's in the area where you live, you're only going to hear what they want to tell you. You have to listen to what they're saying when they go everywhere else. Yeah, he said we'll deploy the worst of the worst. He did make that statement. But his actions and words all around that statement showed otherwise before the vote came. So I see both sides.
no.
I guess my problem with you said people saying they were lied to. I guess because I'm listening with a third eye ear or looking with a third eye, I don't know what to say. I just like sometimes when you're listening to the lie, you're like, how did you believe that? Harold, what were you going to say?
Well, first of all, I kind of got to push back a little bit,
Mhm.
with Dave. I think that they had selective belief. If Biden said it, it was a lie. If Trump said it, it was the truth. So they were
Mm.
selective, even though he did say we're going to deport 10 million people or whatever it was that outrageous number he gave, and he made it seem as if those 10 million people were illegally here in this country. That we let in all of these people, and there was no checks and balances or anything of that nature. Now, last time I checked, actions speak louder than words. When I'm now going back to the farmers, in his first administration, what did he do? He put tariffs out there against China. China then decided what? I'm not going to buy my soybeans or whatever it was they were supposed to buy from us. We're going to buy them from Russia. Technically our enemy. However, China did Putin a solid. I mean, Trump did Putin a solid by getting him some money. While their economy is going through whatever it's going through. But the point here is those that follow. I can't say that they were lied or deceived. I can't say that they didn't believe because when he said that he was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it, it never materialized. And that was what, almost 10 years ago when he continued to crank out that lie. So if you don't believe the lies that are in your face that he told you that didn't materialize, I can't expect you to help me believe or understand that they did not know he was going to deceive him moving forward. He told them, I just need you to vote for me. He didn't care about certain populations. I just need your votes. He made it clear his agenda was to get back into the White House so that he could avoid going to prison. That was his primary goal. And so moving forward, I'm just, I guess I'm over I can't cry tears, unfortunately, for the farmers. I feel that they allowed themselves to be deceived because of the mere fact that they knew what he did in his first administration, that they had to get a bailout, and perhaps they were hoping another bailout would come to them during this administration. So I don't know. We don't know. We're just 8 months in, and we see the calamity that's already
I feel
befallen us.
like I feel like both of it's correct because I'm looking at what Dave is saying, and it's like when you listen to rhetoric and you're convinced that the other guy that's currently in the White House is making it so hard on you, and you convince someone of that, you can tell them anything, and that's where the lie comes in. Because I have it in mind, my life is set up worse than it actually is, and you're going to make it better, and you fall for
Yeah, but
that lie.
he told you he was going to deport all these people. You
Yeah,
were
he did
warned
that.
that it was going to
Mhm.
impact agriculture
Well,
and construction.
that's why I
You were
say
warned.
I see both sides because he did say that, but then when he got to Arkansas, he said, "No, no, no,
No,
I'm
no,
only
no.
deporting the illegal immigrants. I'm only deporting the criminals. I'm only deporting this." And then lo and behold, that was a lie. But then I also see the other side. Well, if someone keeps lying to you, why are you believing the new lie? So that's what I'm saying. I can see
Yeah.
both angles of this, but I do fall in line with you, Harold. Was I don't have the sympathy if you allowed yourself to be
Or
lied
empathy.
to in that manner. Um, Dave, you
I
want to
don't
say
know
something before I
about
move down to the next topic? Hmm?
I don't know about sympathy. If I try to
Empathy,
understand
not
why,
sympathy. Is that what I meant? Empathy and not
Empathy.
sympathy? Yeah.
Empathy.
either one, farmers are not stupid. Farmers are very. If you run a farm, are very
Oh no,
sophisticated.
farmers aren't stupid, but there's a
Right, and
person that's
so
the leader of this country that thinks they are.
right, and the thing is that these are very smart people. So if you want to understand how they're taken in, right? I mean, this is my whole thing is like how are they taken in? I think one thing Harold pointed out we're going to make Mexico pay for it. A lot of people on the left, on the right, have heard Trump say a lot of effed up stuff, and they they revel in how pissed off it makes us libtards, to use a bad word because we're using the tard part of it. But that's pretty much how they are about it. And I've actually just heard guys sitting there talking about Trump saying stuff, and it's always not about what he's saying. They don't care that he's misrepresenting. They love that he pisses people off. And so, in a way, I might suggest that the experience of the first administration is that Trump says a lot of stuff. It pisses off the left. He says it largely to piss off the left. We don't take him literally, and so we expect that in whatever he says he'll do in practice, it's going to be moderated in some way. Because in the first administration, he was very moderated, right? I mean, to be honest, and again, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to back these people up, but if we think about it, it's very different the second time around. There are no guardrails. He's actually doing this crazy ass stuff, whereas before he was constantly saved from himself by his staff,
That he
right?
fired, and that's why it's not being
Staff
moderated
or
now
by the
because he's
deep state.
fired everybody that would moderate him.
Right. It,
You know,
I'm just saying that if you were somebody thinking you're going to get a second Trump administration, you could be forgiven for thinking, all right, there's a lot of stuff out there. The worst stuff he won't do because he will be stopped from doing it. That would be a reasonable interpretation, I think, of the first
it's so
administration
funny that you said
and a
that
poor
because
prediction of this one.
it's funny that you said that because there was a caller on James O'Brien whose wife is Asian and same Asian persuasion as their mayor. And James said, "Well, you're on the side for Trump, right?" He goes, "Yeah, because Trump pisses off the mayor of London, and I like that." He goes, "Yeah, but he's saying racial things towards your Asian mayor of London." He goes, "And your wife is Asian, so are you on the side of your wife or the person who's saying racist things against Asian?" I'm on the side of whoever pisses off the mayor of London. It has nothing to do with my wife. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's like, what are you talking about here? Um, Question. Jimmy Kimmel came back. Did you guys expect that type of quick backlash when he was suspended indefinitely? So Disney's portfolio dropped $4 billion. They
Okay.
lost over $1 billion in the first 48 hours over Hulu subscription cancellations, Disney Plus cancellations, people who had planned weddings and made down payments. Some of them got their down payments back, some of them didn't, but they canceled their wedding, which means a lot more money gone because they're not coming, the spouse is not coming, the guests are not coming. People who were performing at Disney events canceled. They lost a lot of money. Now Jimmy Kimmel came back, but still he wasn't put on every show because in certain places like Oregon and DC,
So,
it was blocked. But I was not expecting that swift of a backlash. And now of course, conservatives are trying to do an opposite backlash. But that's a lot of money, and that was a lot of backlash. It came out that in the executive meeting that ABC and Disney did not want to suspend Jimmy Fallon, but they felt they had to because of the threats from the president. And my information about a future merger is kind of shaky because I didn't dive in it too much. They're supposed to have a merger down the road, and we know how mergers work. You need the government to kind of sign off on certain mergers. Were you expecting that backlash to happen so swiftly and so strongly?
Harold, you go.
Well, some other pieces to this puzzle is the FCC also controls licensing for your traditional broadcast networks, not cable networks. Cable is
Mhm.
not regulated the same way. So they can't go out and threaten CNN and MSNBC and those networks. They can only threaten, or Fox News for that matter, the cable version, not so much the broadcast version, due to how the FCC regulates your traditional channels. However, I think what happened in this particular case is a manifestation of what transpired with the boycott of Target. Target's stock has been slowly going down and now it's pretty stable, but they've been losing a lot of money over the last few months. That particular model has now manifested itself into this particular instance dealing with Disney and the issue of free speech. And because you had a larger swell of the population participate in that, self included, I keep forgetting to cancel mine, but it will be canceled tomorrow so that Disney knows and understands it. Listen, I don't need it. It's not something that's a requirement or a mandate. But as far as the
Mhm.
swiftness of it, I'd have to say I didn't know what the numbers look like, but I
Mhm.
will say this: money makes people move in certain
Yeah.
ways, and
I've
when they
got three
see
more
the
episodes of yeah.
when they see
I
the
got three. I
ramifications
got
of it,
three
they got to
more
move.
episodes of Abbott Elementary before I cancel mine. I got three more episodes, and then it's getting canceled. Oh, three more episodes of that, and then I got to watch uh, one movie on Disney Plus that I've been waiting. A matter of fact, I'm going to watch that tomorrow, and then it's getting canceled. I'm what you call a slow protester, Dave. When they started boycotting Target, I was kind of slow because it's across the street and Walmart's 6 miles, even though 6 miles is not an eternity. And I'm like, yeah, but I need some pots really quick. Let me just walk across the street. Just this one time, I'm gonna go in there and get these pots. But Dave, were you
I
expecting this to be so
yeah,
that
I
backlash to be so great?
well, yes, I expected there to be backlash.
Mhm.
I didn't think I wasn't sure it would happen that fast.
Mhm.
And I think we're seeing that no, it did happen very quickly. And the impacts were far. Disney stock only went down. Their stock wasn't really
Yeah,
affected. It was 4% difference, mainly because the actions they were taking were protecting the value of their stock. Right?
Right. That's
Um,
where the 4 billion comes
Revenue
from.
got
Yeah.
just reamed, and
Yeah.
so I think that was maybe a surprise that the monetary pain would be so quick and acute, which I
Mhm.
think helped them to make decisions. I do think that I'm not canceling jack shit. Okay, I'm watching Disney. I'm watching all this stuff. Um, because I if I cancel it, I'll never get it back. It's hard for me to get. I'm old. I don't need to deal with it.
He's like, I'm
Um,
never
you know,
re-signing
I
it.
don't, I don't, I get a subscription. I stay with it forever. Um, the thing though is that I think that Disney, you look at it, and what's interesting is, um, the institution, they didn't fire him. They didn't cancel the show. They kept paying the workers, right? One of the things I liked
Hold
about it,
on, pause. Because Thursday, after his suspension, they were literally tearing the set down.
they did not stop paying the workers, or
Oh
they
yeah,
very quickly
right.
started paying them again.
Hmm.
Right? And so they pause things, and I think institutionally they weren't up for this fight, right? They
Right.
didn't, I don't think they thought it through,
Mm-mm.
maybe when they did it, or maybe different levels of the institution. But it was this thing of like they very quickly said, we're going to keep paying everyone, and then it was just a matter of time before Jimmy Kimmel came back. And so that's what struck me in this, is that even under the surface there was always that ember, right? It was
Mhm.
always going to come back because they didn't have the gut, not guts. They didn't have the stomach for it. That
Well,
was
I
not in
think,
their
yeah, I think
desire
they
to
really
do it.
didn't want to do it, and that was at the request of Jimmy Kimmel. He says, "Do what you want, but can we pay the employees until you figure it out?" He didn't even care if he got paid. Um, But that's why I think people use the indefinite suspension now instead of fired. Because you can come back from indefinite suspension. Firing somebody and rehiring somebody is different, especially when bonuses and all these things are concerned. So you might cost yourself even more money if you fire somebody and you go rehire them back. But normally when people get fired in these situations, we don't see them come back. So now a lot of people do the indefinite suspension.
which is smart.
Mhm.
You know,
And avoid
Why
lawsuits.
don't they just say suspension? Why do we have to add indefinite suspension?
Yeah, that's true.
Because does the suspension have to have a time limit or something? I don't understand
I,
why it
I
has
don't
to be.
know. You know, when
Well,
indefinitely suspended means it's not suspended for a day or it's not definite time period,
Yeah,
which gives you it's max flexibility,
yeah,
right? You can do this thing and then see how things shake out. And
mhm,
now you might not like that people run companies to make money. You may not like that they amorally wait to find out how things how the wind blows, but they do, and so at a certain level, it makes sense that they do this kind of thing
mhm,
because oh wow, that you people are really pissed about us canceling him. Let us walk this back as quickly as possible and minimize the damage.
mhm,
I think what's important, though, is this question of, I think that this is going to be seen as more of a watershed moment. Um, uh, and the, uh, in this was a reaction. This is something that the Trump administration did that directly negatively impacted a lot of people's evenings. A lot of people who don't necessarily give a crap about politics and don't follow it. You reached in and you alienated a lot of people. You did something decidedly un-American, and you inconvenienced them because now Jimmy Kimmel's not there. You gave everyone something to talk about in a negative way. And, Robert Reich, who's not a guy I go around quoting, but, he penned a thing saying he really feels like this past week, the giant has awakened. The sleeping giant of America has awakened and gone, the F is going on in this country. I don't know if that's true. I forgive me if I don't trust Robert Reich's sixth sense because that's what he said. Oh, I've got a sixth sense about this. I'm like, oh, do you? Do you really, Bob? Um, the thing though is that I think this might be a big moment, and so the whole Charlie Kirk moment may play out in a way that MAGA isn't expecting, and so I think that people will look back. I think the Jimmy Kimmel moment is Brownie, you're doing a great job. Remember that? When Bush told the FEMA guy, as people are dying in New Orleans, Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. That moment, I think, and after that, everything was a little different in the Bush administration. It's possible that that's what we're going to see here, that this is just kind of a turning point. Plane.
It- the plane is landing. Is that what's
It's an
happening?
F-35. It's going to come in
I
and
never know. The plane lands slower than Harold's plane, so I'm like, are you
it
flying like
stays up. I have air-to-air
an old
refueling.
I
propeller
can't with you guys.
seaplane?
I'm not tonight.
It amazes me when people don't have a pulse. They think they have a pulse of a nation. It's just like when I'm trying to remember a story a long time ago. Remember when unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it's a death, the CEO of the pharmaceutical CEO. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
One was murdered in New York
Um, yeah, that was
okay.
murdered.
United
or
Healthcare.
Yeah,
assassinated.
United Healthcare, and politicians and other CEOs were shocked that people didn't have sympathy. And Bill Burr put it out perfectly. He said, how are you shocked? You think the guy that comes in and he can't get his health care and his father's sick and he's working two jobs cares when he can't get his medication because the prices are jacked up too high and you want that guy to have sympathy? It's they need these reality checks. It's amazing the stuff that we're talking about now. I go on YouTube and I
Yeah,
watch George Carlin doing sets talking about the same exact
same
thing.
thing. Yeah.
Just
But
saying, I
Bill
just
Burr,
watched the video of him on the FCC saying the same exact thing, and this was
Yep.
40 years ago.
Bill Burr is a
Hmm.
great, talk about having the pulse,
Hmm.
right? He's a guy who, is out there, is apolitical, but needs to make people laugh and needs to be, he has an angle. And he's shifted from being anti-cancel culture, from being politically incorrect and berating the cancel culture,
Hmm.
to dissing billionaires, right? And he made a shift, and people have commented on Ben Shapiro. It doesn't like him anymore, but
Well, what's so funny about that? My Bill Shapiro's dumb and Bill Burr laughs is because again, people like Ben Shapiro didn't understand what he was doing. He wasn't against like cancel culture as a whole. He was against the outrageous extreme cancel culture. The person sitting on their couch. And one comedian said it best when somebody came to him and said, "That joke you said offended me." He said, "Yeah, but that joke that got you to watch me offended someone else." And that's kind of where Bill's Burr stance
right.
was. Yeah.
And so he may be that his shift in material might be a better indicator of a watershed moment or a precursor
Mhm.
to it. That
Yeah.
he sensed, hey, this is now what people are doing, and not for nothing, only murders in the building. The bad guys are billionaires this year, you know,
Mhm.
and that's increasingly resonating that the billionaires are bad, and that doesn't bode well for
Mhm.
Trump.
Well, the one thing I respect about Bill Burr is it's easy to be on the right side of history if you understand what the right side of history is. But it's one thing to be on the right side, but you're doing it as a grifter or money grab or just because you think that's what everybody's thinking. And you can tell when it comes from him, it's authentic. And I think that's what people respect, the authenticity in when people pivot. Or I won't say pivot because I don't think he did a pivot, but you get what I'm saying. I think it's the authenticity of what he's saying. When something's going on, when something becomes a new thing, are you jumping on that bandwagon just because, hey, talking politics is what comedians do now? Or are you doing it because it's authentic and you're tired of hearing about it and you want to make good points?
And moving back to this recent movement, I'm hoping that this America's response to this whole notion of what's transpired through this administration serves as a harbinger and to them so that they'll understand if you're going to start taking rights away, which you've done, but if you're going to continue down this path, our response, America, from an America standpoint, is to hit you in the wallet. Is we're going to hit you in the pocket. We're going to pull your purse strings to try to get you to change. Because had it not hit Disney economically, would they have brought him back as fast? You know, I don't
Oh
think
hell no,
so.
no.
So,
No, they
but I
can say
think
they would,
by
but
America,
that's a lie.
what I'm saying, but I think by America coming together, we as a people, and saying, well, listen, Disney, we need to tell you to have some nads. We need to tell you to stick out your chest and stop taking it. Do what Harvard did when they were attacking universities. And I haven't seen many attacks on universities lately, but Harvard stood up and said, "No, we're not backing down, and we got long money as well. So we're gonna do what we need to do, and we don't need your money if you choose not to give it to us." So likewise, I think Disney, if they had done that and communicated that to the American people, they would have probably gotten more support from the American people than the responses they got. But I'm glad that they did eventually get themselves back on track.
Personally, I want corporations to do what we want them to do, not what they think is right or wrong, because I don't trust those MFers. And so I'm kind of happy with the idea that they suffered this huge pecuniary loss, or that they
Yeah,
faced it. It's
I'm
called
with
in economics, they call it consumer sovereignty. And the idea that consumers need to buy stuff, right? And so if you piss consumers off, well, no, you don't. You're not going to be in business much longer. And so, to my mind, I will disagree, or I will take a different tact and say that I want these corporations to continually go like, how's the wind blowing with the consumers, because that's grassroots, that's people voting with their pocketbook, and that is voting nonetheless. That is a form of if not democracy, of collective decision making from the bottom up. And I'm glad that it worked so well this time.
I'm with it all day.
I'm with it, and I think it's funny. I cannot find the post, but Brandon Carr and Trump in his first run said about broadcasting and freedom of speech the total opposite of what they've been saying. Newsflash, the last couple of weeks. And here's that George Carlin clip that I was talking about.
The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, decided all by itself that radio and television were the only two parts of American life not protected by the free speech provisions of the First Amendment to the Constitution. I'd like to repeat that because it sounds vaguely important. The FCC, an appointed body, not elected, answerable only to the president, decided on its own that radio and television were the only two parts of American life not protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution. And why did they decide that? Because they got a letter from a minister in Mississippi. A Reverend Donald Wildman in Mississippi heard something on the radio that he didn't like. Well, Reverend, did anyone ever tell you there are two knobs on the radio? On the radio. Of course, I'm sure the Reverend isn't that comfortable with anything that has two knobs on it. But hey, Reverend, there are two knobs on the radio. One of them turns the radio off, and the other one changes the station. Imagine that, Reverend. You can actually change the station. It's called freedom of choice, and it's one of the principles this country was founded upon. Look it up in the library, Reverend, if you have any of them left when you finish burning all the books. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission.
It's, I always
Stop
found
the
that
loop.
funny. It wasn't supposed to do that, but I always find that
It always
funny.
does that. I hate that about this.
Well, because I keep forgetting to put for it to end at the loop, and I have to remember when
It
I
always does
post.
that.
Well, no, I have a couple of them set up for that, but when I pull something up, I had the James O'Brien one already clicked on play once, but I just pull this one up spur of the moment and I forget to do it. But it's always fascinated me when people complain about a comedian or a TV show. It's like, you don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch it. My uncle doesn't want to watch Girls Gone Wild when that was a thing. So you know what he didn't do? He didn't call in and complain about it. He just didn't buy the videos and he didn't watch it. Or maybe he did in secret. I don't know.
There's a very important distinction here.
What's the
I'm
distinction?
not into voyeurism. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. No,
wait a minute. Hold on, Dave.
About
Wait,
George
Dave.
Carlin,
Hold on,
about
hold
what
on,
he's
Dave. Hold on.
talking about.
Wait, hold on, Dave. Hold on. I'm sorry. I never.
No,
in my
Dave's going to finish his
47
point.
No,
Dave's going to finish his
I
point. Dave,
never
what's your point
in
again?
the 47 years of living thought I'd hear that word come out of this man's mouth.
Not into it. Not into
Right.
it.
Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
George Carlin, and when we talk about the suppression that the FCC used to do, right? The things like Lenny Bruce, right? The suppression of Lenny Bruce and his consistent, and the various things that in the past broadcasters have severely limited what people said on not online, on air. There we go, on air. The difference is a minister in Mississippi, right? Some dude out there wrote a letter and complained. It was bottom up, right? It's always been bottom up. And that is to say that people don't like Lenny, a lot of people didn't like Lenny Bruce. Now we can say, well, that's your problem. You should let these other people enjoy him. Okay. And that's that. And I agree with that. But what's so different about this case? What did Jimmy Kimmel did not say anything bad about Charlie
Kirk. No, he didn't.
He
was funny.
He expressed sympathy and he talked about how it was a horrible thing to do and horrible to make political hay out of. And he went on to criticize one person, Donald Trump. And it was the criticism of Donald Trump that was triggered the negative comments from Barr. And so what's different about this iteration
Well, Trump is
is
the
it's
minister in
top
Mississippi.
down. It's
Yeah,
top
it's top
down,
down. Yeah.
and we've never had that
Mhm.
before. Presidents have been mellow.
Well, except for Nixon.
Well, but
Except for Nixon and Norman Lear. Nixon tried to
Nixon and
do a
Norman
lot.
and
Yeah,
Nixon was
Nixon tried to
vilified. We got rid of
yeah,
him.
right. He did a lot
If
to try to
if
get
you
Norman. Yeah.
watch if you watch the end of Yankee Doodle Dandy with Jimmy Cagney
Oh,
playing, to go to an old movie, the end of this movie about George Cohen, the theater guy, has the character played by Cagney portraying FDR in a
mhm,
stage production. And
mhm.
oh my God, everyone's so offended that he's imitating a sitting president, and he gets called to the White House, and he goes. The climax of the movie, or the end of the movie, is him in the Oval Office with FDR, kind of off camera with a voice. But the point is that FDR at that moment is like, I know this is fine. You have been a great American. And, he's lauding him. I think the Smothers Brothers, somebody did something negative about Johnson, and they like wanted to apologize to Johnson. And Johnson told him to get the hell out, that, they should criticize him, that that's their job. And, our history has been to laud the people and to like the president who laughs at himself
Well, yeah.
and
I mean, that's
who
just to like
supports
anybody.
freedom.
Yeah.
And Nixon was way out of line. Trump is way out of line. And that may be
Mhm.
the thing that really, grates people about
Yeah.
this.
Right. And I love the distinction, the difference with the top down, bottom down. I just think they're both equally silly. Uh, that I brought up the Nixon and Norm Lear battles because of the Jeffersons and all the family. Oh, especially Maud. Yeah, that really got them going. 'Cause it's funny because you go look at Maud and they're talking about topics we're talking today. Abortion and women's rights and all of those things that they argued back and forth. And I just remember the things I remember being little and watching like the Brady Bunch or Leave It to Beaver and stuff. God, I'm old. And like, why is there only one bedroom in the parents' room? Well, they didn't want to give the illusion that anyone's having sex. I'm 7 years old. You think I'm thinking of sex when I see two beds in a Leave It to
The
Beaver
twin
bedroom?
beds, the twin
It's like
beds.
it's just such a ridiculous. It's just such a ridiculous thing. But what a great show today, guys! And Harold, you've got homework.
I just want to say Happy Rapture Day.
Happy Rapture.
I'm sorry. What's my homework?
I don't know who's more disappointed, the Christians or the atheists.
I don't know who's more disappointed, me hearing Harold say voyeur or you bringing up Yankee Doodle fucking dandy.
Oh my God.